Hi, George.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. It's been a while since we talked.
It has been. It has been. We've communicated a lot on email, though.
We have indeed.
Where are you right now?
These are not working, so I'm just gonna. I'm in Mexico.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you're on a similar timetable than we are.
Kind of, yeah. Wait, sorry, one second. I feel I need to admit all these people. Sorry.
No problem.
Yes, I am. I think I'm 2 hours. It's 4:30 for me now.
Oh, good.
Weird. No, wait. Oh, whoa. I've messed this all up. I'm very sorry. Sorry. I have messed this all up. Shit. God, I was admitting all these people. Guys, if I'm removing anybody from this call, lovely to see you all. I don't know why everybody's on as a speaker. Sorry. Hi, you're all very pretty. I'm very sorry I'm removing you. Okay, wait. So sorry. Right.
Brian was on, Brian Sprantz.
Yeah, so
I had sent him the invite, and so you did remove him.
Oh, why is Charles on now? Sorry, wait. Something's going on and everybody's coming on as speakers and I don't understand why. Right. Let me try and speak to Juan because he can deal with this kind of stuff. All right. There we go. Okay, Brian
Sprantz.
I'm admitting him.
Riff. Okay, good.
Yeah. Let's see if we can figure this out. Luckily, we're just starting out, so I'm hoping. Okay, there we go.
There's Brian.
You're the right person. Okay. But I don't understand why it says they're waiting to be admitted. There's like 25 people. I'm assuming they can see us, but just give me 1 second. I'm going to call Juan. I will be right back, I promise.
No problem. Hi, Brian.
Hey, what's up, Molly? Coding things with in-market expenses makes things a lot easier for me.
It sure does.
Yeah, it does. I saw that thing that Buffalo Trace was doing. That's like...
Oh, did you? Oh, my God. I know. That was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Their expansion has just been crazy. It's like $2 billion. It's wild.
I mean, the fact that they're turning stillage into food, I mean, it's just such an interesting concept. I didn't really read the whole article. I just sort of skimmed it and then I sent it to you because anytime I see something that says stillage, I think of you.
We got to change that. That's Louis' job.
Fair enough. But,
yeah,
it's kind of amazing.
It's pretty cool what they're doing. They're using, I think, what's called anaerobic digestion, where they're basically creating electricity, but also at the end of the day, I don't know, I think they're making animal feed. But it's very similar what comes out as to what Buffalo Trace, we can nerd out later.
Yeah.
Right. So we're currently troubleshooting. I don't know if it's the wrong type of link, because there's 30 people waiting to be admitted, but I feel as soon as I admit them, they can all talk, which isn't,
Why do you think that?
Because as soon as it says waiting to be admitted 28 people. When I admit them, they can all come on. Even Gabby's screen is on now because she just comes on automatically. She's part of the team, but I don't know if I admit everybody, will they be able to speak? But this has never happened in any of the other webinars, so I think it might have been set up wrong, or I don't know.
George, do you want to just have them mute themselves when they're on?
Wait, George, this is what we're going to do. Can you help me go onto your computer
Okay.
and then go to your calendar.
Okay.
It's the calendar event,
Okay.
and then click the new Riff event, and then click where it's at where you're going to be able to edit it. So like, imagine you're going to change the date or whatever.
Okay. Right, I'm on it. I'm editing it. I can't edit it though. It's like it just says edit my RSVP options. I don't.
Are you on your computer?
Yeah.
Then let me turn up the main video call you.
Okay. Sorry guys. I'll be right back. I'm sorry about this.
You're fine. I don't know if we should talk or not.
That's exactly what I was thinking. We could text.
Text.
Even when I set these things up for like, I have to lead like HOA meetings for our house. It always seems like when you have the most like stress and need to talk about stuff, you can't get it to work.
Yeah, I know.
Right, guys. I think I'm just gonna do that and admit everybody. And you know, let's see what happens.
Are you going to be sharing your screen to show the video presentation?
I was gonna, but I think I'm just gonna wait for everybody. Okay. Hey everybody. I think we're having some technical difficulties for everybody who's joining. If you guys want to just close your cameras. Oh, sorry. I'm still on this call. If you want to close your cameras and mute yourselves, we're going to proceed because we've had a bit of a technical difficulty. And I think me, Molly, and Brian are going to stay on just chatting. And then while we try to fix this, I'm just going to keep admitting people. Technically, it's still the same thing. If anybody feels like shouting out, just mute yourself. And then later, we've still got all the questions. Everybody's still on here. And I think, yeah, we can proceed. I think I can still share my screen here. So I'm going to do that. Let me see. Right. No. Okay. Does everybody see my screen? Does that work? Yes. Okay. I'm going to proceed. I don't know what's going on, but we're just going to power through, and the content's going to be as fantastic as it was meant to be. Yeah, my doggo's here, ready for the webinar. Right. So everybody, thank you. This is him. Sorry. I think I need to keep admitting people to this. Sorry. So sorry. Let me see. Okay, there's people on. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have everybody here, even though we've had a bit of some technical difficulties. Molly, Brian, thank you so much for joining. We're here basically today to talk about our new partnership with New Riff. We've bought some fantastic barrels from the team. Really cool mash bill. I know a lot of you guys on the call have already bought some. Some of you haven't, and hopefully after this call and after this webinar, should everything keep working, you'll want to jump on board as well. So for getting into it, I always hate this part because it's just talking about myself, but I'm the founder of Barrel Global. I know we had a lot of people coming in from outside of our database. So of those of you who don't know me, I founded the company a few years ago, basically on a mission to make barrel ownership available to everybody. whether you want 1 barrel, whether you want 10 barrels, whether you want to bottle your barrel, keep it till it matures and then resell it. We have all kinds of clients from all kinds of walks of life. We make the minimum 1 barrel, so it's quite accessible to everybody. And we help a lot of our clients make their own brands. We help them do their own bottlings, whether that's for personal consumption, brands. And we're always trying to work with the best distilleries so that we can find across the US and Mexico now. And New Riff has always been on my radar. I've always wanted to work with Molly and the team, and here we are. So I'm very happy about this. Molly, I can introduce you briefly. I'm going to go into it, but it's very much New Riff is very much a family business, as far as I know. You've been there, I think, from I guess when you were pretty young. When your father started it up, and then you've kind of taken over. I know he's still involved, but you've been there through the whole process. Acting now as president, and I'm really excited to kind of delve into the story of New Riff as we move on. And then Brian, who's the master distiller. You've also been there for a really long time. I guess that's over 10 years now. You've been with the team, leading and making some awesome whiskey. I just want to say I love you guys' branding, the bottles. I've always loved the bottles, and obviously the liquid speaks for itself. It's won a lot of awards over the years, and just been always very relevant, always growing. I've seen you guys everywhere. Force to be reckoned with. I know I don't know how many states you're in now, but I think it's most of the US, which is super quick for a brand as new as you guys. And yeah, I think that's as good an introduction as I can do. I'm sure you guys can speak a bit more better about the story and your roles. But I guess my first question, and leading into it, this is kind of what we're going to go over. But I wanted just to ask Molly about just the whole, just how it started. I know I've heard some snippets of it was like a liquor store. Now you guys are a distillery, but please do take us through how New Riff started.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, George, for the nice and very warm introduction. And, I'm just happy. I'm normally the one having technical difficulties on my end, so I'm pleased that it's somebody else this time. So welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight to talk about New Riff. We're very proud of what we've built here in Newport, Kentucky, and so it's exciting to be able to share it with you in a different style and context than sometimes we normally do. So thank you for taking the time to be here. My name is Molly Lewis. I am our president of New Riff Distilling. New Riff was founded by my father, Ken Lewis. Ken was a entrepreneur. Well, he is a serial entrepreneur. He was a retailer for over 40 years. So he was a beverage alcohol retailer. He started in his 20s. He had an opportunity from my grandfather, his father, to build a small liquor store section in a discount store back in Louisville. And really flourished and was a beverage alcohol retailer here in the state of Kentucky, and continued to build what is still known to be the United States' largest independent beverage alcohol retail store. Still to this day, it's called the Party Source. I can see it out of my office window. It's right on the border. We're in northern Kentucky, right on the border of Cincinnati. So it was built in the early 90s, and everybody thought he was crazy for building such a large store, but he knew, because Ohio had very restrictive alcohol spirit regulations and laws, that people would come, and he was not wrong. So he really not only was smart in his business planning and building the Party Source, but he also had his finger on the pulse of the bourbon industry and what was happening here in Kentucky, in our great state of Kentucky, and really saw the category moving and changing and expanding. And there hadn't been a lot of movement here in northern Kentucky. So there were a couple of very small family businesses, but most of the bourbon distilleries and heritage distilleries and distilleries of significance that you all know were more located in the Bardstown area, a little bit in Louisville, a little bit in Lexington, and nothing in northern Kentucky. really of size. And so I remember sitting around the dinner table in 2008 and 2009, and him and his fine spirits buyer at the store, a gentleman by the name of Jay Arisman, talking about, wouldn't it be crazy if we came up with and built a bourbon distillery of significance here in Northern Kentucky? And, you know, the first things out of both of their mouths at the time was, if we do it, we cannot cut corners. We have to make the best gosh darn whiskey we can in Northern Kentucky and really build the integrity of Northern Kentucky. And so the goal from the ground up of the inception of New Riff was always about doing things the right way, making the best gosh darn whiskey we possibly could that was representative of the terroir and the uniqueness of Northern Kentucky, which was very distinctive and different from Bardstown and Louisville and Lexington. We're about 2 hours and 20 minutes north of Bardstown and an hour and 45 minutes north of both Louisville and Lexington. So different terroir, different provenance here in Newport. And so Ken set out, and his vision was not to hire a master distiller or an assistant distiller from an existing property. You know, his vision was, I don't want to hire the assistant distiller at Maker's Mark or assistant at Woodford or Four Roses and whatnot. I really want to focus on the absolute best possible master fermenter, someone who really knew beer and really knew his way around or her way around grain, and to train them from the ground up and really create something unique and special and very different here at New Riff. So that was always the vision of our founding story. And Ken went out and found Brian Sprance. Brian will speak about his background, but Brian came into New Riff. I always love pointing this out because it's a point of pride, I think, for all of us here at New Riff and hopefully for our story in the market. But when Brian came in, he was a master fermenter. He knew beer backwards and forwards, but had not distilled whiskey in a professional setting. And so Ken brought Brian in, and with the help of our consulting master distiller, a gentleman by the name of Larry Ebersold. Larry came from Seagram's, from the former Seagram's plant. He had been their master distiller for over 30 years. And we were his first consulting project. He lived here in our backyard in Erlanger, Kentucky. So he lived in our area, and he and Brian really built this place. Okay. We even have a pipe in our distillery named the Larry pipe, and Brian can speak more to that. But, you know, our origin was always that we were going to be transparent, full of integrity, take care of our employees, take care of our little corner of the world, and really try to do something of significance and something different here in Northern Kentucky. And so, you know, Ken was always the first to say that our culture was just as important as the whiskey we were putting in barrel and subsequently a bottle. And I think we've really walked the walk in that regard. Please.
I was just gonna say, like, I mean, I'm excited to get into it, but do you think you were always just, it was just gonna happen, or like, was it just because your dad, like, you obviously, you know, you kind of went along and you were part of the entire process, or have you always been passionate as well about whiskey, or is it something that was born along with this distillery?
Well, thank you for asking that, George. And, you know, I do like talking about Ken, because without Ken, there would be no New Riff. But I appreciate you bringing the attention back to me. And, you know, the story is very interchangeable. I actually gravitated to wine as a young person. I really enjoyed learning about wine and the terroir and the story behind family wineries. And so when I was working in the wine industry for over 20 years, in California and also in Europe, and when this conversation came up around the dinner table, I was very eager to participate and come back and move back to Kentucky, where I'm from. I'm from Louisville. We're a Louisville, Kentucky family, and be part of, you know, building something great, being part of America's native spirit and promoting Kentucky and putting our family name on a legacy. And so it really was exciting. But my background is in the wine industry, actually. And I am still a tremendous fan of wine as much as I am a fan of whiskey at this point.
Nice.
But the idea of making something with integrity, really representative of the area where it was born, is something that really turns me on, and that is really exciting. And that was our intention here with New Riff. So I came in early. My background is in sales. I was our first and only sales director until about 2 years ago. Our sales team consisted of 2 people. So it was myself and another gentleman who lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and we really grew our distillery. We launched our brands in 2018. Our first distillation was in May of 2014. And we really, from the ground up, wanted to make sure that our flagship expressions were bottled in bond. So naturally, we didn't want to release anything until they were at least 4 years old.
Okay.
I'll let Brian speak to that a little bit. I will just finish by saying, or at least finish my introduction by saying, I was our director of sales until 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, when Ken retired. And so we took his responsibilities and we divided them into probably 4 people, or at least 3.5 people, really. Where I am president of the company, I lead with a fabulous female CEO, Hannah Lowen, who has also been with our company since inception. And we have a fantastic engineer on our team who runs our chief of operations. So between Brian, Denny, Hannah, and myself, we also have a CFO on our team who's part-time. We are really trying to take this distillery into its next generation. And I'm really excited about the direction we're going in and what we're doing.
Well, I mean, I could never work with my dad. My dad drives me insane. So that's, I love him to bits, but it's like, it's great to see like that relationship and the fact to see what you guys have built from scratch, basically. So what would you say is, I guess, just here based on the slide, what would you say are like the non-negotiables from New Riff? Like, I know you said, you want to make something with integrity. What is kind of like, would you say are the top 3, 4, 5 things that make New Riff New Riff?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway I always like to say are 2 things. One, we really pride ourselves on being a new riff on an old tradition. It was so fun and exciting and nerve-wracking to name this place. Brian can attest, he was in the room. Putting a name on a distillery, it's like naming a child. You want it to be representative of what you're making now and into the future. And we kept coming back to the idea that we were a new riff, not only on Ken's life, but we had a vision to be a new riff on an old tradition. So we were honoring the history of bourbon production and whiskey production in this great state of Kentucky. And there has been historically so much exciting whiskey coming from our great state, but we wanted to put our own spin on it. Yeah. And so Brian really has led the charge to really create a lot of not just innovation, but really thoughtful nod to history, but yet doing something a little different here. So that's a huge takeaway, I think, that differentiates New Riff from other distilleries, not only in Kentucky, but in the domestic United States. The other thing that's really different and important to us, not that other distilleries are not attempting as well, but our culture and treating people fairly and respectfully is something that is our lifeblood here at New Riff. I mentioned that Ken was a serial entrepreneur and really led by taking care of his people. In fact, to build New Riff from the ground up, the building that I'm sitting in, Brian and I are both sitting in to this day, that you're seeing here on your screen, was built because he sold the party source to the employees. So those of you who might be familiar with what an ESOP is, it's where the employees are actually owners of the store. So now you walk into that store next door and cashiers all the way up to management are actually owners of the store. So it was really life-changing for over 100 families. And financially, that enabled us to build our distillery from the ground up. So the culture, the taking care of people, taking care of each other was always a philosophy that Ken put into place here at New Riff that we try desperately to continue and preserve. I swear it might sound silly, but I swear it's one of the things that makes our whiskey taste as good as it does. If you come here, and I hope everybody does on the call at some point and come visit us, there's a feeling in the air of people who really enjoy coming to work every day. Again, it's work, you know, sometimes some days are better than others, but we've really developed a family environment here where we take care of each other. We take care of our little corner of Newport, Kentucky, and we're trying to make the best damn whiskey we can.
Amazing. Well, fantastic. Yeah, well, I'm definitely coming to visit.
Please do.
That's happening very soon.
Yeah.
Well, I guess delving deeper, I mean, that's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing about your story and your history. It's making me want to go even more and making me even happier that we bought these barrels. But I guess we're going to move on to Brian a little bit now. So we bought all the barrels that we bought are obviously a slightly different mash bill to your core mash bill. What it is similar is the kind of high rye, the 30% rye. So I guess I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what led to that. You know, I know there's a lot of different mash bills you can go with and a lot of different distilleries. What kind of led you guys to focus more on the kind of higher rye? I know that is your kind of most popular mash bill, the one that's won a lot of awards. I know there's different kind of strengths and finishes, etc., but I know that's your kind of core go-to, which is why we also wanted, even if the kind of the barley and the corn is different, we wanted to have that kind of signature rye that we know you guys use and utilize really well. So can you talk a little bit to kind of how that came about and the kind of reception? I suppose it's obviously been good, but it'd be good to hear.
Absolutely. And thank you, George, for having us, and welcome everybody. As you guys mentioned, my name's Brian Sprance. I'm the master distiller here. I'll just give you a brief synopsis of my background. I was actually in the brewing industry as a brewer for 15 years before I came over to New Riff. 9 of those years were in a smaller brewery in Cincinnati, and the final 6 years was in a big brewery, Samuel Adams, which I'm sure probably most people know. So I kind of had both sides of the coin, if you will. I had the artistic and creative side that I learned of brewing in the small brewery, but also equally as important as I understood process management, people management, all the things that have to happen to actually make these liquids on a large scale. So as Molly came from the wine industry, I came from the beer industry, and I think she also mentioned that I had zero experience in making distilling whiskey. So that's kind of the new riff on how you hire a head distiller. I was hired in 2013 as the head distiller, and I just recently, I think about a year and a half ago, was quite honestly dragged across the finish line of taking the master distiller title. It's a pretty big title, and they're definitely shoes that I'm growing into. But a lot of what I've brought to whiskey making, specifically to New Riff, has been a lot of 2 pieces. One was I had a great mentor in Larry Ebersold, who was pretty much known as the godfather of rye whiskey. I think Molly mentioned he had been in the Seagram's distillery over in Indiana, and actually quite a few of their distilleries around the U.S. and even Canada for the better part of 40 years. So when he came in, he gave us the advice of let's start up and let's make 2 specific types of whiskey. We're going to make a bourbon whiskey and we're going to make a rye whiskey. He said to basically stick to not pulling as many variables out of the process in the beginning, but really focus on, like, starting up a distillery is a tremendously difficult thing, but also open fermentation, all of these outside influences that are going to affect your finished whiskey. We need to figure out exactly what the distillery is going to give us. So we started up. We always knew that we loved rye whiskey. How can you not make rye whiskey and high rye whiskey when the godfather of rye is teaching you how to make whiskey? It was one of those things where I didn't necessarily have any good habits, but I also didn't have any bad habits. I'll take it even a step further. Like, I didn't even drink whiskey until I took the job learning how to make whiskey. So, you know, there was a lot of inexperience in the building. I think Ken said it best, as in we've just kind of like grown and learned a lot of things organically. But when you have essentially a legend in the building that says, let's focus on these 2 things, we're going to work with a couple of different barrel types. And that was very traditional whiskey making for honestly the first 6 months. So we wanted to figure out how to kind of settle into the distillery. As many things as we broke, we had to learn how to fix them as well. And really, it took us about a month to like really get a good, solid, like kind of consistent production run under our belts. And then and only then were we able to actually sit down and start evaluating the distillate and say, okay, these are the kind of flavors we're getting. These are our yields, and figuring out a lot of like the engineering technical, for lack of a better description, like kind of the nerd side of making whiskey, which are the things that I personally love getting into. But, you know, it was very much starting in a traditional kind of, let's figure out how to make 2 types of whiskey. Let's figure out what the barrels are going to do. And then from there, I always thought that Larry was going to be with me for 6 months, a year. After about 3 weeks, he kind of looked at me and said, "You're going to be fine, kid," and just kind of stepped away. Granted, he lives 20 minutes from here, but it was a pretty intimidating thing. I tell a lot of people, like, it was probably the most exciting and terrifying time of my life until 2018 rolled around, and then we had to start releasing this whiskey that we kind of just thought we were doing okay on. But what we learned from those first 6 months of making just the traditional mash bills and using, you know, I think we used 2 types of barrels, was that, okay, we've kind of figured out the basics of how New Riff wants to run. We're familiar with the flavor profiles that we're getting out of the whiskey. So let's start to spread our wings a little bit. Once again, who do you go to when you want to know, hey, thank you so much for teaching me how to make whiskey. What was the favorite whiskey that you ever made? And it kind of shocked me because he said it was 100% malted rye whiskey. I'm not above stealing a good idea. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to make that whiskey if you can make that whiskey. We made it. Thankfully, he loves it to this day. It's one of his favorite whiskeys that he makes. But really kind of stepping away from traditional bourbon and rye recipes and going into the 100% malted rye really just started getting my brain turning. And that was really kind of like the genesis of us really starting to like dip into what I call like my brewer's toolbox, because in a brewery, you can use 30, 40 different types of malt. You can use unlimited amounts of yeast. So I didn't really know better or worse here. So when I started like really kind of like, and I shy away from the word like experimenting because it kind of insinuates that you throw things against the wall. I think, as Molly mentioned, we've always been like super thoughtful about how we want to develop recipes. Thankfully, I had the 15 years of experience of working with just a plethora of raw ingredients, yeast and things like that. So I didn't necessarily say the next logical step for us making a high rye bourbon is going to be, let's make a wheated bourbon. Matter of fact, we went from making 100% malted rye whiskey to kicking off our single malt program. So we didn't know better and we didn't know worse. And, you know, I'll say that we were kind of naive, but also it's another huge credit to Ken. When he hired me, he said, I'm going to give you the best tools. I'm going to give you the best distillery that money can buy. But at the end of the day, I want you to do what you want to do. And I've said this story a ton over the years, but when somebody says, I'm going to give you a creative license, you know, I've walked through breweries most of my adult life, and a common theme is I always want to do what I want to do. But when somebody actually says you can do what you want to do, it's like kind of staring off a cliff and going, well, this is what I kind of asked for. You know, we had an excellent consultant down the road. We knew that we were making pretty good distillate. You know, even 6 months in, we were very proud of the whiskey that we made. But really, it was like kind of to wrap it all up, like the jumping board for us to really getting into what I would call research and development and developing all kinds of new whiskeys was being confident in what we were doing up front, learning the distillery, kind of getting the blessing from Larry of, okay, you guys aren't going to screw this all up. And that from there, I felt pretty emboldened to start doing some more creative things and reaching back into that brewer's toolbox of a lot of things that I've used in the past, different fermentation techniques. And to this day, I still learn something new probably every week on like how our distilling, how our beer still and our doubler work. We also have a pot still. So there's so many things to like play with and tinker with here, but also just to kind of have like that very focused kind of just beady eye on just what we want to like do, which is chase quality. And that's all that was ever really asked of me was let's try to make the best whiskey we can. Just honestly, like make it come from the heart and do what you can do. And, you know, there's no scientific or technical background to happy people make good whiskey. Or, for example, we have our own water source. We're tapped into an alluvial aquifer 100 feet down from the distillery that we pull 500,000 gallons out. Does it provide a house flavor profile? I'm pretty sure it does. But again, it was just, it was the freedom to create. And I tell so many of my friends in the industry, they don't honestly believe me that like we are able to do really what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it. And it's not like we're not a business, you know, we need to like pay bills and do all these things. But if it was always like chasing quality in whiskey, it honestly, there was never a second thought given to it in any of our meetings with Ken, or for that matter, anybody. It was always, okay, this barrel might cost a little more, or this grain, if you're developing a mash bill, as long as we were chasing quality and it didn't cost $1 trillion, we were honestly given the freedom to do it. So I think a lot of what we've been able to accomplish over the past 10, 11 years has just been kind of a testament to us being able to do what we want to do and be creative, but also extremely thoughtful and just very focused on what we want to do. A lot of the mash bills that we've developed, I mean, I'm even still shocked when we go upstairs and see kind of just the breadth of whiskeys that we've made. We have a wonderful aquifer, a wonderful bar upstairs called the Aquifer, where you can actually just kind of put your eyeballs on every single kind of whiskey that we've made. And it's just kind of a testament to just over the years of just learning how to do different things and just really research and development and being focused. And again, when somebody gives you a creative license to go and do the best that you can do, it's a lot of trust, but thankfully everything has hopefully worked out pretty well thus far. And there's also, I'll end with a lot of really exciting things on the background or in coming up for the whiskeys that we've made. But it was really that foundation of learning how to make whiskey and then just taking a lot of what I learned in the past and applying it, as well as working with a wonderful group of people here that are also just so focused on trying to make the best whiskey we can here in Newport, Kentucky.
Amazing. And I guess like now that, I mean, you guys are in 50 states, you know, I think we're really past the point where it's like you've went from a small brand to maybe not like the big like Sazeracs of the world, etc., but you've went to like a pretty well-sized large brand. How do you split that innovation and experimentation? I mean, I know you didn't, but you know, for lack of a better word, that kind of experimentation and more limited releases to then fulfilling all the kind of national you know, demand. And obviously I'm assuming you guys are going into export markets as well. Has that been kind of a challenge transitioning into, you know, being a smaller business and kind of getting to the point, because you have done so quite rapidly, I'd say, in comparison to like, well, not in comparison, but just looking at distilleries and the time it takes, you guys have, I think, grown pretty quick and pretty scaled pretty quick.
I'm happy to jump in here to start, Brian, and then happy to hear your thoughts. No, thank you. We actually expanded to 50 states this year. So this has been the big year. We also just sent our first shipment to the EU. So we're very excited with a very small but mighty distribution partner. So that's the beginning of that next step of our journey. You know, we're very proud of what we make, and we don't have to be everywhere. We have to be in the right places, right? We want to be in the right bars. We want to be in the right restaurants. We want to be recognized by the right aficionados and people in the know. And so I think we do a good job of that, making sure that our core items are available in all 50 states and across the EU. And, you know, we allocate our special releases, our specialty releases. We try to be as friendly to folks as possible and make sure that they're accessible. Sometimes they're not, but we do our best. We don't do what other distilleries do, which is ship everything outside of Kentucky. We also like to keep a decent amount of our special offerings available here in our gift shop and in our local retailers. You know, we try to support tourism here in Kentucky and get all of you on the call to come see us when you fall in love with something you like.
Okay.
I can follow up on kind of how we develop the whiskeys as well. Thank you, Molly. In order to have all of these types of whiskey, you have to start somewhere. And we kind of called it like the new Riff graduation. When we wanted to, and this is what I get back to talking about, kind of just like extremely focused on like kind of the research and development side of making whiskey. When we wanted to try a new mash bill, a new grain, back in, I call it the day, but 10 years ago, we used to make a single batch of it. That single batch would yield 13 barrels. Of course, we had to wait a couple years until we could actually evaluate the distillate. But based off of a lot of the learnings that we got from making our, what I call traditional bourbon and rye recipes, we were pretty confident in our production techniques. So we would do what was called one fermenter. We would evaluate it after about a year, sometimes 2 years. Obviously, I think everyone in this chat knows that making whiskey is a very long-term play. So you kind of have to like just kind of keep an eye on the future, kind of try to guess at what 5 to 10 years down the road looks like. But a lot of the brands, a lot of like what we call our core products have evolved from being that one initial batch. We were able to evaluate the distillate. We were able to evaluate it out of the barrel at a year, 2 years. Granted, everything takes longer to kind of develop in the whiskey world, but those are kind of how things have grown up. I think a really good example of how our portfolio, at least what we do for year in and year out production in the distillery, is 100% malted rye. I asked Larry what his favorite batch of whiskey that he'd ever made was. We made it. That was 13 barrels. Fast forward a year, we were like, oh, that was really good. And by that time, we were making more whiskey. So instead of making a batch, we made what was called a day of it. By that point, we were running 3 fermenters. So we would make 45 barrels of it. And as years have progressed, for example, last year, I think we made almost 500 barrels of malted rye whiskey. Same story with the Balboa rye whiskey. Same story with the the wheated bourbon. All of these brands that are out and are coming out have all just been years in the making. And it's just taken kind of like, we just really had to babysit these ideas and kind of trust the process. But after a certain point, you kind of cross that line of just saying, like, as long as the grains are of good quality, we obviously have access to some of the best, in our opinion, barrel suppliers in the world. You know, the process is tried and true in here. Our techniques are about as tight as they've ever gotten. We've gotten substantially braver throughout the years. And I think, thankfully, we'll be reaping some of the benefits of a lot of these things that we've just really worked on. And honestly, now when we do develop a new whiskey, it is very rare to go back to the early days of let's make one batch, because we've had those kick us moments already where we're like, why didn't we make enough of that? Or why did we only do this once? And I think another great example of that is the first batch of wheated bourbon that we made. We were so used to super spicy clove, cinnamon, like high rye bourbon whiskey distillate that honestly, when we tried the wheated bourbon off the still for the first time, we were pretty underwhelmed. And then of course we tried after 2, 3, 4 years. We're like, oh man, these are the things that we have to revisit and really like, not necessarily double down on, but just go, these are spirits that we like. These are whiskeys specifically that we like. And you have to find out what works and what the flavor profiles are going to be. You know, I don't think without that early kind of, and I will use experimentation for the early days, I don't think without that freedom to do a lot of the things that we did now, that we would have necessarily all of these different kinds of styles of bourbon whiskey. Now, as we've grown up as a company, we now, of course, have sales data and we have meetings where we plan production and we do all of those things now. But, you know, we're at 11 years old. We're a baby of a whiskey company. So we're always going to be trying to innovate and be creative and kind of just do our thing.
Yeah. Nice. That's super exciting. And I guess following up on that, I mean, for everybody on the call, and you know, who don't know why we're doing this, I've wanted to work with New Riff for a while. I think I reached out like years ago, and I don't think you were doing these kind of partnerships. And I kind of like the fact that New Riff is very selective, as you said. Like, you know, you allocate your stock, you work with certain retailers. You know, you're not one of like the contract sellers just sell to anybody and anyone, and you're very protective of your brand. And I'm really glad that we've had the opportunity to come in and be a part of your journey, buy these barrels for our customers as well. That you know, we're really excited for the future. And is that something new, or is it something? Are you starting to develop new partnerships for the future now that you guys are more settled, I suppose? Could you talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are foremost focused on our own brand, right? Yes. We're focused on our New Riff. You know, everything we make is distilled, aged, and bottled here on our property, and that is our focus, and it always will be. So these barrels that George and that Barrel Global purchased are not our normal, we say, cup of tea, or we don't normally build relationships like this. You know, we produce we produce our barrels for ourselves. And so for select relationships, you know, we trust Barrel Global and we like working with George and Juan. You know, we will do these contract projects where there will be barrels available, but it's certainly not our go-to-market strategy. There are many other distilleries that focus on that, whereas we do not.
Yeah. And what would you say, I guess, I mean, this is always a tough question, but what would you say the 5-10 year vision is for New Riff? I'm assuming, I guess, a lot of global expansion. I've always loved the branding. I think the branding's fantastic for, like, don't know how you get those bottles, like semi-dark, semi-not, but I've always really liked the branding and how it looks. I'm very much a like storytelling branding kind of person. But yeah, what whoever, I suppose, is it, where would you see the brand in 5 to 10 years?
I think I'd love to hear Brian's take on this as well. Well, thank you first of all for your compliments on our bottle type. You know, they really represent perfectly our being a new riff on an old tradition. We took a more traditional shape and we put our own spin on it, or our own riff on it, by ombreing it. That's what we learned, that gradation of color is called, and embossing the things that are important to us, not chill filtering, and being bottled in bond for our bottled in bond offerings. You know, our 5 to 10 year plan is we're holding on tight to being an independent distillery. It's hard. It's very hard to be independent and family owned. You know, when you're successful and when you're growing at the rate that New Riff is, it's hard to stay on top of it. And so our 5-10 year plan is to continue to be family owned and independent and operated that way, because that is one of the secrets, not only, but one of the keys to our success, because that family ownership enables the freedom to innovate and to focus on quality that Brian refers to. So I would say we're not in expansion mode in the distillery per se. I would say that we're happy to be the size that we are, but we do want to make sure that New Riff is more available worldwide. So we'll focus on international footprint, and our international footprint. We'd love to have New Riff on bars and back bars in Mexico and all the exciting places, George, that you seem to be across the world. But Brian, I'd love to hear your take on your 5 to 10 year plan. We're so busy, we don't have these conversations with each other sometimes internally.
Yeah, I'll echo what Molly said. It's just so important to what we do here to remain independent and family owned. It provides such a foundation of creative freedom for what we're able to do in the whiskey. I'm so thankful that I am able to kind of focus on just being the whiskey purist of the distillery. You know, my focus is within these 4 walls of making all this whiskey. When people ask what it looks like for 5 to 10 years from now, it's a super interesting question to me, because what we see in 5 to 10 years from now is honestly what I've been working on for like 5 to 10 years prior to this. Already. I think we try to hold about 30% of every year's production back as well for further aging. So I think that's evident in that we've put out some 8-year-old whiskey now, and we did a very small Kentucky distillery only release of some 10-year-old. But if my number one probably thing that I look most forward to is just continuing to build those age statements, watching how our whiskey matures, but also really opening up the doors of the warehouse and like really sharing a lot of these projects that we've worked on. It's not necessarily that we're like super tight-lipped and don't want to tell secrets or anything, because I think we're about as transparent as you can get. But in all honesty, I've forgotten probably 25% of the types of whiskey that I've made. And there's always that aha moment where we walk through the rick houses, or you kind of look at the spreadsheet of the inventory and you go, oh, huh. But it's just really like, it's a lot of the things that we've been working on for so long. We always had that like long-term vision of what is this whiskey going to look like. Even from the inception of some of these whiskeys that we've developed over the years, we always had the plan of we're not even going to touch them for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So, and hopefully that continues into the future. But I can say, for how about we chop it down to the next 5 years? I don't think that there's honestly a lack of super interesting and exciting and delicious whiskeys that are sitting in our warehouses ready for us to start blending with.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I can't really echo the family thing, but I do understand, like in Barrel Global, you know, I work with, you know, with Juan. He's one of my best friends. You know, it's a very different feeling, you know, having full control of what you're up to and the creativity and what you get to do, as opposed to, you know, when offers come in of boards and, you know, it gets, you know, so I can definitely partially relate to like the fun of just being able to run the show and go with your ideas and, you know, do things the way you want to do it. Yeah, so it's awesome to see it. That's what you guys are doing, obviously at a bigger scale, but it's pretty awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We're gonna jump into questions, and there's quite a few. Wait, I've got kind of PTSD anytime I'm clicking something now, because I feel I'm gonna shut everything down and remove people. Stop presenting. Pretty sure. Okay, that's normal. Right, we're back here. Get to see a lot of people here. I'm gonna jump into some questions, and then we just see kind of who can take them. So let me get in here. So we have, so from Ramon Salas from Houston, Texas. He is asking if there's a choice of adding ingredients to the spirits. So, I mean, I think that's a kind of, that turns a spirit into a different spirit. It won't really be called bourbon at that point. Do you guys, or I mean, I know you have, but have you ever thought of experimenting with any flavored bourbon and doing more of that, flavored whiskeys and such? Is that something that interests you guys, or no?
I can take this one, Molly. That's never honestly been a focus. It's never even been on our radar. We've even shied away from a lot of barrel finishing ideas. We have one barrel finish right now, and that's the malted rye, the 100% malted rye. We work with a cooper over in Spain that actually incorporates casts into a Solera in his bodega, and then he takes them over. So we wanted to treat that 100% malted rye whiskey like almost a malt whiskey, like they would over in the UK. I can tell you through probably 15 notebooks of ideas that I've filled up throughout the years that not a single one has gone to any kind of additive or flavoring. It's the great thing about straight bourbon and straight rye is it literally is what it is. You cannot adulterate it. You cannot flavor it. You cannot really do anything. And then when you get into like the bottled and bond, it's even more of just a stamp of authenticity of we made this whiskey. We've done other spirits. We've made a Nocino, for example. We've done some other things, but we will probably, unless something drastically changes, we will probably always remain purist to making straight bourbon, straight rye. Nice. Now, that's not to be said that we don't experiment with different kinds of casks and other things. We have a malt whiskey program that incorporates a lot of different types of new used sherry barrels, like I was mentioning. But, you know, we are built to be a Kentucky straight bourbon and rye whiskey distillery. So with all the kind of rules and regulations that go with it, it also kind of like provides a little bit of a shield for us to just say this is the kind of whiskey that we want to make.
Well, I think we're all happy to hear that, I think, on this call. I don't think we're looking for any barrels of like peanut butter whiskey and stuff like that. Mark Wilson from Knoxville, Tennessee has asked, how are you able to maintain consistency in the taste and quality of your mash bill from production run to production run as you grow exponentially?
Sure, I'll take that one as well. So we just have a maniacal focus on quality, whether it's working with the grains. Our corn farmer is about 100 miles from here in Indiana. He grows all non-GMO corn. He was actually trained in his early days by the Seagram's distillers. I know that like people don't often associate Seagram's with this amazing whiskey that they came out, but the fact is that they were some of the most technically proficient distillers probably ever. He was trained by them on moisture. We also have a great rye supplier that has just remained consistent through the years. And I think I mentioned it before. It gets back to keeping your processes just airtight. Our mashing techniques, we are on them like a hawk. Our fermentation, which we we put a lot of thought, time, and effort into just watching it and making sure temperature control, our yields, all these things. Consistency comes out of doing the right thing day in and day out at New Riff. And that's, again, a testament to us being able to go out and work with the best suppliers that we can, and then doing our part as well through the entire production process. We also barrel at 110 proof. We don't really change anything based off of that. Again, we have played with some different barrel varieties, but also at the end of the day, when we're putting together, whether it's a bottled and bond 4-year-old blend or an 8-year-old blend, we don't have a ton of the variables that we have to worry about. We don't have a lot of the experimental type stuff that we developed early on, where we're like, we'll just blend it off, or this doesn't matter. Everything matters to us. And that's just, we're very fortunate to just be able to have that as kind of our sole focus up front. And then on the back end, to speak to the consistency, up until probably 18 months ago, I know this sounds a little ridiculous, but it was true. We were actually pulling a barrel sample from every single barrel, and we would run them through our sensory program. We only do 12 to 14 a day. I will say that we also take our whiskey down to 40 proof, because we actually remove the ethanol from the process. So we can actually smell what's been fermented and what's been distilled and what's been aged. So just really consistency in our end product starts from the beginning, and it never really ends. And we've just been, again, extremely fortunate to have the same reliable suppliers, as well as just really having a dialed in process. And a lot of the techniques that we use for bourbon and rye, we really do find translate over to a lot of the other whiskeys we make. We're big proponents of sour mash. We sour mash every single one of our whiskeys. There's another piece of the consistency. We also have our alluvial aquifer well. The water has not changed a degree in 11 years. It's 58 degrees year round, super high in calcium and magnesium, which is great for yeast health. There's just a lot of things that have stayed the same while time has marched forward.
Awesome. Well, Mark, hope that answers your question. Next, Don Buck has asked from Washington, what is the exact mash bill and what is the recommended aging period? Well, as we mentioned, our mash bill is slightly different to the core mash bill of New Riff. We've done 60 corn, 30 rye, 10 malted barley. So we've kept that kind of 30 rye that the most New Riff products come out at, but we've changed the corn and malted barley. What is the recommended aging period? Do you have like a sweet spot, Brian? I mean, I know you guys are launching new things and more aged product, but is there like a sweet spot that you think works?
I can tell you that, again, it goes back to all of our production techniques up front, our low barreling proof, working with great barrel suppliers. Also, 110 barreling proof, I think, is a big part of the consistency. And also, we would not have released whiskey at 4 years old if we were not 100% proud of it. We think the whiskey is exceptional at 4 years old. But if you want to extrapolate farther than that, when we started getting into 6-year-old whiskey and 8-year-old whiskey, we weren't really sure what it was going to do. I mean, again, we're learning with the whiskey as it goes. We were very, very, very happy with how the 8-year-old whiskey tasted as well. So in the 4-year-old whiskey, we tend to get a lot more of like kind of the rye forward, the rye grain, like kind of baking spices and clove and nutmeg. Those really do shine brightly through kind of that corn sweetness. When we got to 8, we were actually like kind of like a little bit confused for a minute, because a lot of like what we were so familiar with, the baking spices, etc., they had actually integrated with some wood spice as well. So they were still spicy, but they were a little bit more oaky, leathery, and things like that. It changed from a delicious whiskey that, honestly, if I'm at home, I'm still probably drinking mostly 4-year-old rye whiskey, to 8 years old, just kind of showing the trajectory of the aging process. We were a little, I don't think hesitant is the right word, but we were like, okay, when we started tasting 10-year-old whiskey, because we have no idea where the end of the road for this thing is. Again, for better or worse, we get to be the gatekeepers of what New Riff whiskey tastes like. But I can say that we were all just extremely pleased that at 10 years old, it did not taste like it was getting tired in the least bit. So delicious at 4, different and just as delicious as 8. But I don't know. We'll probably have to check in a couple more years when we have 12-year-old whiskey. I don't know what the ceiling is for our whiskey, but I know it all starts with just consistency and quality raw materials up front, barrels, etc., so that we are able. I laugh and I say this in jest a lot of times, but it's so important for us to be so consistent up front, because we are literally chopping 100-year-old trees down and lighting them on fire and putting all of this money into it and hoping it turns into something good. So we've just, again, always had that focus up front. So maybe at 12, I can check in and say, hopefully we're still going great, and who knows? We'll see what it takes like at 15.
Check with you. Happy to check with you.
You know, we just honestly never had to taste a bunch of 1-year-old or 2-year-old or 3-year-old whiskey. I have had our 3-year-old whiskey recently, and perfectly mixable. It's, you know, it's a young whiskey. There's a lot going on to it. You know, it's a big corn driven bourbon. So it needs a little bit of aging, but you know, 4 was at the time the greatest thing in the world that we ever done. And we thought that was the sweet spot. And then 8 were as equally as happy. So it's kind of one of those things where you're not going to really call any of your kids ugly.
Yeah, fair enough. Awesome. Right. Next one by Salvatore. Sorry. Any chance of Balboa rye barrels being available for Barrel Global? We haven't done rye yet, to be honest. But you know, once we sell out of these awesome New Riff bourbon barrels, who knows what we're going to order next? And definitely rye is on the radar for us. Another question on consistency. I think Brian's covered that, so I think we'll move on. Guess Molly, one for you. Are you looking? I mean, I think you mentioned no to this, but are you looking to expand the distillery to another location?
No, I appreciate the question, but you know, we like the size that we are in right now. We're very comfortable in our what we can produce and what we can store and age. So we're sitting tight.
Yeah, sounds good. Next one from Mike in St. Louis. Do you have plans to launch a 10-year-old product? And as an urban distillery of the Bourbon Trail, sorry, these are separate questions. Sorry. Does New Riff plan to launch a 10-year product? Or, yeah, what kind of products how aged are you looking to go? I guess, Brian, you touched a little bit on that. Do you just keep checking as you go?
Yeah, 10-year-old is in the crosshairs right now.
No, Robin's camera just came on. He looks like he's having a great time. Next, as an urban distillery off the Bourbon Trail, how is... Wait, Juan's looking at this, so I can't see it. Okay, how has that helped or hindered your D2C business?
Does it hinder our direct DTC business? Was that the question? Yeah,
I mean, I guess, do you focus heavily on direct to consumer, like the D2C business, I suppose?
We actually don't. You know, it's a category that's discussed a lot here internally in Kentucky, and you know, we have the opportunity to ship directly within the state of Kentucky. We choose not to because we choose to, you know, drive business to our retailer customers and friends. Similarly, with the states that are available for DTC shipping currently, they are, we've decided to work through our distribution partners in those states instead of pissing them off or going around them or going over them. We're honoring, at this point in time, the 3-tier system.
Okay, amazing. I guess this is one for both, and I'm kind of not going to be surprised what it's going to be, but if you could drink one bourbon for the rest of your life, what is it? Say it funny, you say a Scotch or something. No.
I have to say that it's our sherry finished malted rye.
Okay.
So Brian spoke a lot about malted rye. It is, I mean, all of the things we make are very special and unique, but our malted rye in particular is very interesting. You know, perhaps we could have a totally other webinar just about malted rye because it's interesting and a unique category, but it's the only thing that we have finished that we've released in a sherry barrel. And coming from with my wine background, I really enjoy the flavors of that particular to whiskey. So that will be my last one on my deathbed if I'm lucky.
There we go. Brian, what about you?
It probably will not be a very popular answer because I don't think anybody can currently get it, but I was super, super happy and kind of sentimental about hitting 10 years of bourbon in a barrel and came out at 120.2 is exactly where I thought a 10-year-old bourbon should be. Just kind of one of those kind of landmark monumental type things. Personally, there was probably a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of mine that went in there. Hopefully those don't all distill out and age out, or maybe they just aged out, but that's kind of my sentimental favorite. And honestly, on the opposite side of that, my other sentimental favorite is probably our 4-year-old bottled and bond, just because that was the very first whiskey that we ever started making, and it was our very first release. So kind of sentimental favorites, plus they also, in my opinion, taste pretty darn good.
Fantastic. Yeah, love me to try all those. Guess I won't, but
Give it some time.
Yeah. Next, any plans for wheated bourbon in the future? I mean, honestly, we are just kicked off this partnership, but it's not, a one-off. Definitely not in our eyes. We wanted to go with the kind of, well-known high rye, but there's no, the world's our oyster in terms of whether, we do wheated bourbon next, we do something else. That rye sounds pretty good. So there's a lot of opportunities. Definitely want to keep developing this and have a lot of different options for you guys. Let's see. Coco Walter, female distillers on the up and coming. I guess whether that's something you're seeing, I suppose, is a question. Like whether, Molly, you're seeing a lot of female distillers on the up. You said you guys have, your team consists of a lot as well. So is that something?
It's not something that we intentionally set out to do. I'll be very transparent about that.
Mm-hmm.
And but one of the things that we say a lot here internally is the right folks in the right seats, the right people in the right seats.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens to be that a lot of our leadership and management are female. We do have a few female distillers. And so I do think you are seeing a pattern in the bourbon and in the American whiskey industry, or perhaps the whiskey industry in the world, that more female leaders are coming into the space.
Okay.
And I think that we add a particular flavor and touch that's a nice addition to the industry.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. It is not uncommon for me to look out onto the production floor and see two female distillers running the production floor and doing everything. We had she recently moved on, but we had a female distiller here that was almost a little over 10 years. So
yeah,
I mean, I guess that's just kind of what we see.
Yeah, I'm seeing it a lot in Scotch as well. I think yeah, guys. Sorry, this is like the most questions we've ever had. So there's tons of interest. We're almost there. I think there's James Jacob is a fan. Will Ken Lewis be at any events this year?
Perhaps we can get Ken Lewis at events. Perhaps we can get him. He still will sign a couple of bottles here and there and make appearances. No, I mean, New Riff is still his pride and joy. So depending on the event.
Fantastic. And then, so I think we're going into the questions that have been pre-asked, and then there's a bunch of people that have sent some in. Opinions on water source. Opinions on water source. I think you mentioned, Brian, that you guys have a very special water source for the whiskey you use. Mineral content of a distillery, and kind of where you source your barrels.
Yeah, we source our water from 100 feet down. Again, we're tapped into an alluvial aquifer. We pull 500,000 gallons a day out of it. And actually, we don't just bring it in and send it right down to sanitary sewer. We're actually very green about it. So we don't adjust our mash with salts or anything like that. We use the water for what it is, and then we figure out what we need pH-wise by adding backset. And when we're done, when we use it for what's called non-contact cooling water, i.e. running our condensers or running the coils in our fermenter, we just send it right back, and there's a culvert behind the building, and it just dips right back into the Ohio River. So very green. It's also 58 degrees a year round. So you'll hear of a lot of distilleries shutting down in the summer months when it's just too hot and their water source gets a little too hot. Thankfully, we haven't had to deal with any of that. It's a big water. It's a very, very hard water. It's so hard that it's destroyed all of our carbon steel piping over the years. And now we have this like crazy German space plastic that seems to be holding up. But the barrels, the majority, I would say, come from independent stave. We also have worked with Kelvin in the past. But really, we've worked with a who's who of whoever you can think of that's made a barrel. We've probably tried them out. But right now, the predominant supply is probably coming from ISC. We use a heavy toast char number 1 for approximately 25%. We also use a standard number 4 char. And then we also use a barrel from ISC that's a medium toast plus char 4. So that's how we're also able to gain consistency across our blending, as well as showing variation in the single barrel program as well. So we're never going to be the type that uses 15 different types of coopers to try to figure out what's happening in the end. It's pretty tried and true practice of making barrels. And again, with so many other things in the air, you want to be able to at the end of the day kind of lean into and trust a barrel supplier. So we're very happy with ISC right now.
Fantastic. So some people that are actually on here have asked, does Newrit work to replicate recipes? From listening to Brian, it sounds as though you do not try to replicate your whiskeys exactly. So, I mean, I think you were talking about consistency, but.
Yeah, I always tell people we don't blend for consistency. We blend for quality. Okay.
Fantastic. Taylor has asked, what's barrel global purchase from Riff? As we said, we purchased a 60 corn, 30 rye, 10% malted barley. That's kind of what we've bought our first batch of. It's around 120 barrels. And that's what we have available for purchase, simply because as Riff, as Molly's mentioned, they're very, want to protect their brand and keep growing their brand. So we get to purchase a slightly different mash bill. And that also makes it a bit harder for us to purchase. We can purchase aged stock, but what we're currently offering is, New Riff barrels with a slightly different mash bill to what, Molly and Brian and the team are making.
May I just jump in there too, George? I think it's really exciting that you're purchasing a little bit of a different mash bill too, because if anyone on this call does decide to purchase that, it's different and it's unique from everything else we have in our core line. So it's very special in that regard and limited.
No, definitely. Yeah, I'm very, very excited about how it's going to turn out. Daniel's asking, what should we expect from our mash bill of 4 years cask strength versus the New Riff 65-35? Do you have any thoughts on that, Brian? How it might differ slightly, or is that just a whole new?
I can give you an educated guess. I think with a 10% inclusion of malted barley, we might see a bit more of the nutty, bready kind of more what you would associate with like kind of a maltiness. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be overwhelmingly different by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it will be different enough. And I think the example I give a lot of people is they get kind of a pronounced sweetness out of our standard rye whiskey. Mm-hmm. And I think that's attributed to 5% malted rye. Okay. You take 5% malted rye out of the equation, put 5% malted barley in. To me, it's a little bit different of a whiskey. So it's those small little nuances that you're able to work within those mash bills. And I think they do go a long way in showing a little bit differently.
Fantastic. Is there an opportunity to purchase recently filled barrels? My son is due in late November, and I'd love to buy him a barrel and aging it for the future. Yeah, that's exactly what we are currently selling and what we've bought. So yeah, your son's about to own a very cool barrel for when he turns 21. I was going to ask Daniel Craig's question about what is the pricing. Daniel says, so the pricing's there. It's $2,500 for a new fill barrel. That includes samples, storage for several years. That's something you can speak to your account manager with. Charles, Juan, and Murray are always available. Looking forward to the 2025 headliner. Robin's just loving stuff there. Looking forward to the feature New Riff at my wedding in Cincinnati in September. It's Robin who's having the time of his life there. New Riff is honestly the best bourbon in the market right now. That's also Wallace. And Charles is saying the head of sales is saying that New Riff is Robin's favorite. So Robin, you're a star. What else do we have? I think we're almost finishing up here. Will New Riff be at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival in September? Yep.
Yes.
We sure will. Yeah, both Brian and I will be there along with a representation of our team. So come see us.
Oh, I'm very sorry, I missed. So could you speak to your partnerships with community organizations? Why is this such an important part of how New Riffs operate? It seems like a lot of your offering are also supporting local communities, which is amazing. Brad.
Hi, Brad from Northern Kentucky. Hi, thanks for calling us out. You know, happy to talk about this ad nauseum. This is a passion of mine, as well as many of us here at the distillery. But, you know, we like to think that we create the best whiskey we possibly can and use it as a vehicle for good. So we are a business, we operate as a business, we have to keep the lights on, etc. But we do like to make sure that a portion of our proceeds are also celebrated with the community in which we live. And we try to put our money where our mouth is in that regard. So, you know, the Brighton Center and a couple of other important local organizations are near and dear to a lot of our hearts here at New Riff. And, you know, we try to make a positive influence in our backyard and our community.
Fantastic. Then do you offer special release bottles at the distillery? And are those kind of exclusive to the distillery?
We do. We actually do a very good job of putting our special releases out into the market as well.
Okay.
However, we do have a couple of things that are only available here at the distillery. Another reason to come see us here in Kentucky. But yes, there's always something fun at the gift shop that you won't find in your local store.
Amazing. When will the New Riff and Barrel Global Gathering be at the distillery? So, I mean, that's something we need to plan, but we always like to bring a bunch of our clients to the distillery, which we're definitely going to plan for. And if it's not, you know, in the next few months, closer to the end of the year, it will definitely be next year. If we come visit, which tour do you recommend?
Which tour do we recommend?
You have different tours? I'm not sure.
Oh, no, we do. Sorry, I was just reading the question. I think all of our tours are exceptional. We have folks, in all transparency, that will come back and take the same tour again because they always feel like they learned something new. We have really, really dedicated tour guides. Many of them have been with us since the beginning, which is unusual to have career tour guides. I think our bonded tour is really cool. Brian, do you agree?
Yeah, if you want to see more of kind of the upfront whiskey making process, the bonded tour, they'll actually walk you through the distillery and taste spirits while you're in here.
Yeah.
Fair warning, it is insanely hot in Kentucky and specifically inside of our distillery right now. We also do a barrel proof tour over at our West Campus where you get to see the Rick House and our other different warehouses and our bottling facilities and where they do single barrel picks. You really can't go wrong.
Yeah. And Grover is the best. I do see that.
Yeah, Grover is the best.
Grover's the best.
And Travis is going to be there to pick up a bottle tomorrow. Yeah, to pick up a bourbon group barrel pick. Right. That's over like an hour and 15 minutes. So thank you so much for your time. And this has been awesome because it's probably been the most questions anyone's ever sent through or asked. So Molly, Brian, thank you so much. Really excited about this partnership. I'm really glad you all got to join us and kind of learn about the New Riff story, where it's going and what's happening. And we'll definitely, hopefully see you in person very soon.
Great. And I'll just give Travis S. a shout out. I will also be here for a little while tomorrow evening with the Whiskey Weather event. I imagine that's the barrel pick you're coming to celebrate. So introduce yourself to me, please.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good rest of your day. And yeah, we'll see you in Kentucky soon.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, George.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.